This is Greg Myers, and this is our first time using this technology. So if you see us looking around, we're probably looking for what the buttons are to push. But welcome to the event, and I appreciate everyone's time and participation, especially the speakers, and obviously a special thanks to the sponsors, which WNet and PaySafe have been sponsoring this whole podcast series. And then obviously we added NMI to help sponsor this event. So thank you obviously to the sponsors. Thank you all. This is an incredible topic that we need to be talking about in our industry. So I think this is year one of many years to come, and hopefully we can continue to grow this event. And who knows, maybe one day it becomes more than just virtual. But, I'm not going to introduce Joe. I'll let him introduce himself. But we've got a very interactive presentation coming up from Joe Carella. So again, thank you everyone for being here and participating. You can write comments on the right. I can kind of help manage some of that. We can even at the end ask you to share. We can share the mic with you so you can come up sort of on stage with Joe if you have a question for him. But I don't want to eat into too much more of his time. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe to get started.
All right. Thank you so much. Wow, it's quite an exciting opportunity to be able to talk to people across the financial services industry, and with a special focus on payment. I'm really excited to be with this group and to talk about inclusion, less so from the perspective of compliance, as you're going to find out, and a lot more from the perspective of what we as leaders are responsible for, and how our brain helps us and maybe not. And so I'm going to share my screen. Give me a second, because I'm getting used to this platform too. There we go. All right. So I want to reflect on two things. One is, can we truly be inclusive? What does it mean? And what does inclusion really means in the context of leadership? The other aspect is, can we really draw an ROI? And if so, what does that return on investment look like? So I'll get started and just walk you through some of this. I am seeing that Katie is asking whether slides or a recording will be sent out. I am going to suggest that that's going to be the case, and I'm happy to share the slides as far as I'm concerned. Just reach out to me. That's not a problem. Let's see. This is not as intuitive as I thought it was, so bear with me. There we go. All right, first of all, something about me. My work and research focuses on strategic decision making. So you will see that I have a slant in that sense in the way that I approach inclusive leadership. My interest in inclusive leadership, I'm a professor here at the University of Arizona in the Eller College of Management. And my interest in inclusive leadership stems from one concern, that biases such as confirmation bias may lead us to exclude what could be potentially important insights, and that can ultimately have a negative impact on our business outcomes. If we are ignoring voices, are we missing out on something? It's as simple as that. To get us started, I would like to do a very simple exercise. And so I'm going to ask, if you don't mind putting this in the comments. And some of you have already seen this exercise, but for those of you that haven't, maybe new, I'm going to ask you, we all live in a very different world right now, a world that it's remote. So the way that we look, the top half of our screen may look very different from the way that we look, the bottom half of our screen. So I would like, if you don't mind, to tell me in the comments if there is anyone that's wearing tennis shoes right now. So if you don't mind typing, I can see your name. Sean is saying nope. Emily is saying no. There's a few no's. I'm surprised we don't have anyone wearing tennis shoes. No, 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 no. All right. This is very interesting. Wendy is wearing sandals. She's in Florida. Okay, so we're going to turn from Kim is wearing socks. Emily is wearing slippers. All right. For those of you that are not wearing, let's kind of turn this a little bit. For those of you that are wearing slippers, socks, or sandals, I'd like to tell me as many, and to list in the comments as many reasons that you can think of as to why those that are not wearing socks, slippers, and sandals are doing so. Why do you think that they're not wearing more comfortable shoes? Or no shoes at all? Work mindset, more professional. They must be working in the office. Any other comments? All right, so I'm going to be asking those that have not responded and that in fact are wearing other than socks, slippers, and sandals. Can you tell me why you think the people that are wearing socks, slippers, and sandals are doing that? What do you think? To be comfortable, Polly is saying, great point. Comfort. Yeah, lots of comfort. Lazy, Greg is saying. Definitely comfortable. And so I'm gonna pick on some of the comments. And what I want you to notice is that you'll notice that I've divided you into two groups, fundamentally. The whole point was to try and divide you into two very distinct groups. And whenever we do that, and we do it all the time, by the way, whether it is you're working at the headquarters versus you're working in an office, in a regional office, or whether you're working downtown or you're working on the outskirts of town, we tend to do that all the time. We tend to categorize people. We tend to put them into boxes that kind of fit with how we think of others. And sometimes, Greg, I don't mean to put you in a difficult spot here, but sometimes we also kind of put not so positive connotations as to why others do the things that they do. It's just a natural way that our brain works. It likes to categorize things. It likes to make assumptions about others. So whoever said, for example, that people that are wearing tennis shoes are definitely doing it for comfort, and Wendy, for example, is pretty sure that that's the case, we're making an assumption. We are starting to define what others are at without even realizing that we do that. And so if we do it for something as trivial from a certain perspective as the little exercise that I'm having you do, one wonders what we do when we in fact have to worry about more important things. So what I'd like you to do is to start to think about blind spots. I'd like you to think in terms of blind spots, because whenever we start to make assumptions about things that we don't really know, where we haven't asked questions, and whenever we start to put people into these kind of comfort zones categories, then we are starting to potentially have some downsides to it, things that we need to take care of, both in terms of risk to our business as well as missed opportunities. When it comes to risks, for example, one of the things that I always think about is the automotive industry. And the bias that it's gone, the blind spots, biases that have gone into car design. Female drivers are 47% more likely to be seriously injured in a car crash. It's kind of surprising, right? You think that everyone is protected to the same degree when in a car crash. Thankfully, that's starting to shift. In 2011, the first female crash test dummies were required in safety testing. Can you believe it? That it's only been since 2011 that we have female crash test dummies required. But we're still building fundamentally on 50 plus years of dangerous design practices for cars. As I was putting these slides together, I couldn't help thinking about the fact that we're moving to a new territory in which we have self-driving cars. And so I personally hope that we never live in a future in which self-driving cars are more likely to, for example, hit one racial group or prioritize the life of some races over others. Unfortunately, when a single homogeneous group is designing and engineering the vast majority of a certain technology, they will consciously and unconsciously pass their own biases. This is about risk, but it's also about missed opportunities. So let's think through the reverse. What opportunities, for example, are being left on the table? One example that I always think of, because I was personally involved in it, is a Microsoft study of the revenues that it was projecting for its Xbox due to its vision system and the fact that they were not making as much money as they thought that they were making, and especially in certain segments. And what they discovered was that the vision system in the Xbox that looks at the person who's playing in front of the screen and sort of doing hand gestures to mobilize whatever avatar they have on the screen, what they realized is that the optical system was not able to differentiate long hair with arm movements as well as darker skin. What is really interesting for me in this sense is that once Microsoft identified the problem, they estimated that they had lost about $380 million in lost revenues on revenues of about $4 billion. And they had 1.5 million less Game Pass subscribers that they thought that they were going to get. So I took all of this and all of these thoughts, and I thought, well, let's think through what other topics that you're going to be going through today. And so you'll be talking about culture, you'll be talking about algorithms, you'll be talking about how to essentially measure the impact of DNA practices. And one thing that came to mind was a headline that I think I read a couple of days ago, that robo-advisors are in the financial services industry are going to be projected to manage about $1.3 trillion by 2024, if I remember the figures correctly. Today, they manage about $460 million. And in 2008, they had just been launched. So if I start to think, who's designed those algorithms? Who's working, for example, with the sales teams to kind of target the right kind of customers for robo-advisors? And in the end, I cannot help thinking that there is plenty of blind spots that we should be worried about. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, because what I think we need to be thinking is, where does the problem lie? And the problem lies fundamentally within each one of us. This is where blind spots and biases happen in the first place. And I'm going to share with you a model of the brain that I think you should be thinking about, especially when you're thinking about inclusion. And essentially, our brain is structured in three major parts, in very simple terms. There is one part where our experiences accumulate over time, where we build memories. It's almost like our database, and it has like think of it as a Google search engine that we use to retrieve those pieces of information. And just like Google, there are some things that you're going to be getting in preference than others. So it's not like every time that you do a search on a specific topic, you're going to be getting a different result. Every time that you do a search, you're going to get a preferential set of things that the Google search engine wants you to get. Our brain works pretty much the same way. So if you're scared of spiders, you're going to be consistently scared of spiders. If you really like cake, you're consistently going to like cake. It's essentially what our brain likes to do: retrieve information that validates what the experiences and memories are. There is another part of our brain called the chimp. This is where feelings and impressions are. So if in our database it says that we are not to like spiders, the chimp brain immediately goes into the emotional thinking and goes, oh my God, I'm scared of spiders. Let me get out of the room. I don't want to be here. You know the feeling. The third part of our brain is the human part of our brain. It's the part that looks at facts and truths and looks at logical thinking. It's the part that would, when activated, will say things like, no, I understand that this is not a venomous spider. And even if it was, it's much smaller than I have ways to control this. I can kind of value the pros and cons of putting it in a glass versus just putting it on a piece of paper and taking it out. Or if the human brain does not get kicked in, it's us essentially stepping on the spider and finally relaxing. So different parts of the brain work in different ways. And not only do they work in different ways, they also work at different speeds. So the computer brain is the faster part of our brain. It takes 20 seconds. It's 20 times faster. I apologize. It's 20 times faster than the human brain and 4 times faster than the chimp. What does that mean? It means that blind spots are so ingrained in who we are because our brain is fundamentally a little bit lazy. It likes to see repetition. It likes to access that repetition. And it wants to get as much of that insight as possible in a consistent way. You all drive to work, I'm sure, or at least you did before the pandemic, and you know what it feels like to be on an autopilot. You won't even remember how you got to the office sometimes. You're so distracted. It's your brain telling you, you know, I've got this. You can concentrate on more important stuff. I know what to do. The problem with that is that it's good when we're doing things that we've done a number of times. It's not so good when we are confronting a different reality. And I would challenge anyone in this group to tell me that there is anything normal about the business environment in which we live, and especially in the context of fintech, that there is anything familiar with how we've done things in the past. It is not the same. And we should be challenging our brain to think differently. What ends up happening? What ends up happening is that because our brain is lazy, it likes to work with people we know. It likes to engage people that think like us. And that does not create the space for inclusive leadership. So what I want you to think about is the fact that essentially our brain is trying to keep up with all these different parts of the brain itself, and not really doing a good job of figuring out when is it that it needs to stop being lazy versus when is it that it needs to stop engaging alternative point of views that challenge the computer, the chimp brain, so that the human brain can start to separate facts from fiction. So I want to shift to thinking about inclusive leadership, because inclusive leadership, as I was mentioning, comes anytime that we recognize that we need to be thinking differently, anytime that we're confronting ideas and concepts that are not familiar to us. And we really should be thinking about what inclusive leadership is all about. Research done by Catalyst across 250 organizations in 6 different countries. And they range. So from emerging markets to more established markets like the United States, China, India, Mexico, found that inclusion is essentially the balance between having a sense of belonging and feeling unique. I really want you to think about what that means, because when we are being inclusive, we are allowing others to join in, but we're also allowing people to feel similar to others, but we also allow them to be recognized for their distinct qualities. I think that often in the process of thinking about inclusion and diversity, we are forgetting that it's not just one or the other. It has to be both. We have to be able to create an environment that allows for both to emerge. Feeling included is the fundamental drive to form and maintain lasting positive relationship with other people. We all fundamentally crave one thing: to have our voice heard and to be respected. And in the workplace, that's extremely important because we may be missing out on the opportunity for good business outcomes. And that's why we're moving on to the ROI of inclusive leadership. One thought that I want to leave you with before we move on to what does research tell us about the value of inclusive leadership. One thought that I want to leave you with is that there is a generational shift. And while, for example, the generation that is currently leading many organizations looks at inclusive leadership as and inclusion as a question of compliance and essentially making sure that we're doing what is right by the law. Younger generations don't look at it that way at all. And that's one of the other interesting results from the survey done by Catalyst, is that millennials especially, see diversity and inclusion as a mean to a business outcome. They see inclusion as fueling teamwork, innovation, professional growth, and ultimately profits. So what is the ROI on inclusive leadership? One thing that I can tell you is that there's been plenty of studies, and many of these studies, including my own, for example, I just put it in there. I'm sure that you cannot even see it. I've put in there the little quote from Forbes magazine on a piece of research that I did on women leaders and innovation. But essentially, there are lots of fragmented studies. But we're starting to do some meta-analysis. Meta-analysis means looking at studies that have similar conditions where essentially correlation can be derived. And what we're starting to see is that inclusion really drives more collaboration in teams, greater innovative drive, and more confidence in tackling tough issues. Those alone, for me, are factors that should make, if you are a sound business leader, you should be asking yourself, what am I missing out by not doing the right kind of work on the inclusion side? And so what am I missing out in the process of putting together a team? What voices are not there? So I wanted to conclude this session with one last thought. And I was thinking of sort of a simple idea that you could take to work and that you could use it in your daily lives, whether you're running a team or not. And essentially, it's based on this concept of CUBS. So I think it's easy to remember because of the acronym. So CUBS means being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So comfort with discomfort. What does that mean? It means that it is okay. No one is expecting you to be the all knowing, all understanding of cultural differences, of how other people live their lives. There is no disrespect when you're approaching people and you're asking things with curiosity. And so be comfortable with the fact that there will be times when you're presented with a situation and you're asking yourself, how does that add value? It's okay to say that.